on. So I make no apology for repeating what people have seen, because it's a really exciting and kind of new way of delivering renewals for Southern. So we'll talk through a little bit about the background as to why we've developed this model as we've developed it, the kind of key component parts of the enterprise as we describe it, how we think it will work in reality, and then a little bit more around kind of behaviours and how we're trying to drive the way in which we do things to be slightly different. So having stuck it in slideshow, I can't see there it is. Okay. So you'll hear us talk a lot about something called the enterprise model, and this is the sort of wrangle that we keep referring to, and you'll see it several times in the slides as we go through this. But in essence, 3 years ago, we took stock and said, well, what's working well in terms of renewals delivery in Southern today? What are the things that aren't working so well, and what are the things that are frustrating us? And what's the rest of the infrastructure industry doing in order to deliver their renewals capital programmes, and what's happening in that space? So Andy mentioned Project 13, which is something that was developed through the Institute of Civil Engineers and the Infrastructure Client Group, which was really something that threw up traditional contracting models in the air and said, actually, if we started from scratch, what would be a great way to deliver programmes of work and activity for infrastructure in broadly and more generally. And so that was launched probably about 7 or 8 years ago, Project 13, and there's been lots of organisations since that date that have been taking it on board. So Anglian Water, other parts of Network Rail, the Environment Agency, Sellafield, Yorkshire Water. There's kind of a long and growing list of organisations that have been taking it on board. But each of them have done something slightly different and have learnt lessons along the way. So one of the key parts of our early piece of work was just looking at what everybody else had done and trying to learn from them. So what were the challenges that we were trying to work through? So I've pinched someone else's slides that have loads of animations, so bear with me. So traditionally, at the point at which we submit our business plan, we put the rates we expect to pay in the business plan and the efficiencies that we expect to make. So it's all done based on Network Rail knowledge and Network Rail views of the world as we submit our SBP. Then at a point between the draft and final determination, so kind of at this point in the period towards the sort of middle end of year 5, traditionally that's the point at which we would appoint our supply partner frameworks, and those are the people that will be asking to deliver that work for us. And then when we get into the new control period and start delivery, we work on a project by project basis, awarding each project contract based on target costs, which the contractors have then built on a bottom-up basis. So we set a bunch of rates ourselves with not a great deal of engagement with the supply chain. We then appoint the supply chain based on what we've got in our business plan and what they've tendered. You're right, Paul, it's jumped off. And then on a project by project basis, we then award what we're doing. So people on Teams, that our screen has just died on us, which Paul had predicted. So whilst they're trying to fix that, what we're trying to break is a set of really kind of tense relationships between us as the client organisation and our contractors, who are generally, shall I unplug it and plug it back in again? Contractors who are delivering for us. Just have a technical pause a second. Encouraging noise. Our big screen is waking up, hopefully. So Paul, did you say you thought it was every 20 minutes?
Yes.
That was about 27 based on this one. Excellent. Should be back. It's coming, or does that mean it's just reshare? So what we're trying to fix is this kind of peculiar relationship where the rates we're measuring people against are completely different to the rates that people then have contracted against, and causes us no end of pain on a project by project basis. So what we're trying to do this time is bring the strategic business plan, so the SBP and the supply chain together. So through 2022 was the period through which we were selecting our supply chain partners to form part of our Southern Integrated Delivery team. And so through that period, we had an understanding of what we thought our exit rates were going to be, so what we were paying at the end of CP6. And we were pretty transparent with those guys around what we were expecting to be paying at the end of the control period. They had good visibility of that, and that was kind of part of the basis of them pulling together their kind of tender submissions, if you like. So that by the time we got to our draft business plan that we submitted, we had a really sort of well understood set of rates and efficiencies that had been developed together with those supply chain partners. And we invested hugely in that selection exercise. So both we as Network Rail and the supply chain partners invested massively in it. I've got some stats, so I'm just trying to think if I can find them. So I think it was a 7-month period that we've been building things over, and I've just lost the number. Here we go. 22 workshops. There were sort of 3 2-hour presentations for kind of several of the sort of summary pieces, and then each of those tenderers had to submit at the end of the day what they proposed to be their 10 efficiencies that they were going to commit to in our business plan and the risks, and those then formed part of their submission that all of the partners who were tendering could then kind of have visibility of. So by the time we submitted our draft business plan, it was completely joined up with that tendering exercise. And so in February, we appointed our successful partners, so that we've been since in the process of co-developing our integrated enterprise. And the whole intent of this is to be really clear about removing duplication of effort, moving to outcome specs, so that we're focused on what we're delivering for passengers and customers, but delivering the right thing based on affordability, and that we're in a position to innovate and invest in joint digital platforms. So really, really focused on being able to do the best thing so that powers work as hard as they possibly can. And then ultimately, when we start delivering, we'll be delivering on aligned outcomes and rewarding based on sort of the tendered profit, but then performance. So theoretically, we should all be pulling in the same direction, so that it's absolutely a business-to-business relationship, and it's based on our affordability of what we can deliver, but also our supply chain partners making a profit. And I think it's fair to say historically in Network Rail, profit might have been a dirty word, but actually to survive in the market, we need our supply chain partners to make a return for their investors. So it's a really sensible thing for us to be acknowledging that they need to make profit to exist and deliver for us. So what do we mean by the enterprise? So for Network Rail colleagues, and certainly Tim's team and my team, there's some significant changes that will be afoot. So in terms of what the enterprise is constituted of, the Southern Integrated Delivery team is made up of our supply chain partners that we have just, as I say, appointed back in February. So we have 4 tier 1 supply chain partners that are part of that integrated delivery team, and us as Network Rail and our works delivery team become a minor works partner within the integrated delivery entity. And then there's a whole bunch of capability that Tim's team does today within capital delivery that will move into that integrated delivery team. So that's all about some of the kind of Network Rail client side processes, as well as the kind of oversight and assurance of what our deliverers are delivering for us. That integrated delivery team are supported by an ecosystem, and that ecosystem is the broader supply chain, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then we retain as Network Rail some capability as a capable owner. So what we would understand to be engineering and asset management today becomes part of the capable owner, as well as some of the other functions that currently sit in our capital delivery capability today become part of that capable owner. So again, that might be a bit more of some of the assurance stuff that is traditionally in capital delivery, but but bringing it together in one place. We'll end up repeating these terms many, many times in slightly different guises, so bear with us. I talked a moment or two ago about outcomes. So when we first started talking about what would success look like at the end of CP7 and through delivery in CP7, we talked a lot about outcomes in terms of what it is that we're trying to achieve and why. So 5 things here, not dissimilar to how we would sort of recognise, those of you in Network Rail, the strategic themes that exist today, but try to put in much more sort of friendly language and kind of closer to our understanding. So happy customers, both in terms of passengers, freight users, but also recognising the impact we have on our line-side neighbours, being safe, fit and healthy, so really recognising the linkage between all 3 of those things, and making sure that we're focused on all 3 through everything that we do. I've mentioned affordability and profitability, but making sure that we're able to meet the ambitions that we put in our business plan, but also our supply chain partners are able to meet their business aims. Being cleaner and greener, so wrapping up all of our sustainability objectives in terms of reducing carbon footprint, being efficient in resource use, protecting and enhancing biodiversity, and then also around leaving a positive legacy. So picking up some of the areas where we can add social value from our projects, being huge beneficiaries of kind of for our own people and across the supply chain, so that we're actually really leaving that legacy for the next generation, but also building capability in the market that exists long after this particular arrangement has been in place. We also talked about a series of guiding principles, which were around if we could describe sort of on a page how it would work and what that culture might look like. So we talked about how things would work. So we wanted to be collaborative, aligned and agile. So working closely with supply chain partners and being integrated, but also recognising that we don't live and work in a stable world. So there's an agility needed to be able to respond. We talked about how we might develop, so that's being really open to learning, both from within the industry and outside, being able to innovate where it really adds value, and then using digital technology to join things up. And one of the good things around setting up the enterprise now is that we can be really open to different ways of, at a very simple level, managing documentation or kind of exchanging information within the integrated delivery team that is unconstrained by Network Rail systems. We just need to work out how it feeds into it at the end of the day rather than being constrained. And then in terms of success comes from being people focused and being inclusive and making sure that we bring everybody's views to the table. People and our partners being incentivized to deliver value based on the outcomes that we've committed to. I said I'd repeat some of this. So the enterprise, yet again, is the capable owner. So the bit that you see at the top of the chart there, and our responsibility as capable owner is around owning, defining, and assuring what gets delivered. We've got our Southern Integrated Delivery Team, who are the team that plans, specify, assemble and hand back. We've switched the language quite deliberately into that of manufacturing rather than traditional construction, because most of our opportunity comes from being able to manage this on a portfolio basis and kind of getting into that mindset that says how much can we really take the sort of learning from a manufacturing type approach in terms of what we deliver. And then I mentioned we've got 4 supply chain partners, so Volker Fitzpatrick for buildings and civils, Atkins Realist for signalling, Volker Rail for track, and Octavius for E&P. And then our minor works partner is effectively Works Delivery, as we would know and love today. It's supported and delivered by a wider ecosystem, and we're in the process at the moment of developing what that ecosystem strategy looks like. So a few principles around that. So what we're trying to do is align how we engage with and manage the ecosystem with what the broader enterprise objectives are. So being outcomes focused, being really clear about how we can integrate and involve those partners early, making sure that things are commercially aligned, that they're sustainable and attractive, and making sure that things are really sort of mutually beneficial in terms of how those folks are engaged. So recognising that there's a massive opportunity if you look at the portfolio of work that we deliver across the southern region for all kinds of different size organisations to get involved. And because the SID contracts are effectively 10 years with a 5-year opportunity for break, we've got a really great amount of time to invest in and make commitments to the broader supply chain. So that process is in development at the moment. There are some details we can share separately around registration and all of that kind of good stuff in terms of being interested. But a really key part of delivering it is around that ecosystem being properly engaged and a really important network for what we're delivering. So just in terms of how that all fits together, so we've got the capable owner, we've got the Southern Integrated Delivery Team, and we've got the ecosystem of partners, which are shown at the very bottom of that chart. But then, of course, we only exist in order to deliver and support our route teams so that they're able to deliver for our ultimate customers and stakeholders. So we call those guys part of the wider enterprise. I know lots of you folks are in that part of the enterprise. And so one of the things we're working through at the moment is exactly, well, how does that work in reality, and how's that different from your interfaces with asset management today? We don't think it will be massively different, but it's the kind of conversations that we need to keep live and keep having. I've talked about the outcomes, which are the piece that in terms of what we're trying to deliver in the middle, but it's all supported by 2 key tenets of whatever we do, we put passengers and freight first, and then we're always safe, which you can see around the outside. I think jump onto Tim for a little moment.
Thank you very much, Sian. So what this is, you may have heard of a thing called the SID, the Southern Integrated Delivery. This is the delivery capability within the Southern Renewals enterprise. And how this is structured, as Sian's just said, it has the 5 delivery entities: buildings and civils, track, signalling, EMP, and minor works delivery today. But the opportunity, as we just talked about, is bringing those together. That's where we see the opportunity. And so there's a significant focus about how do we integrate those disciplines to drive efficiency, basically. This is one of our key areas of opportunity. So how this is set up contractually, for just in case anybody's interested, it may just be me by the faces I'm looking at, so I'll talk online, you look less grumpy. So it's an NR21. What that means in normal terms, it's an alliance agreement. So it's an alliance agreement is the foundation of this, but it's not just an off-the-shelf thing that we've used before. This is the first time we've taken these principles and used them in a portfolio. So it's an alliance agreement, but across the whole renewals portfolio for 2 control periods. So it's different to anything else that's ever been done in UK rail before. So in terms of some of the mechanisms around how this is going to work, we'll talk about this a bit more in a moment. But what's really important is the link between how this operates and the strategic business plan, which will become the final determination. There's a hard wire between what we promise we'll do in our strategic business plan and how the SID will make profit. And that's another first for industry. And we'll talk about that a bit more in a moment. And the bullet points there are a really simplistic way of looking at the contract. But I'll explain. I've got a couple of I'm not this capable. Someone clever has done some pictures in a moment, is going to articulate how that profit-making mechanism works in the next 2 control periods for us. So there is some animation in this, isn't there, Sian? Yeah, not this Tim. There's a capable Tim out there as well. So convention outside of track would see us operating as the left-hand side of what you see on the screen at the moment. That is Network Rail, we'll have a strategic business plan that says this is all the stuff that we're going to do in renewals for a control period. Conventionally, there is no link contractually between what we say we do to our regulator and what happens on a project basis. So if we're going to, I don't know, renew an underbridge, we agree a target price with whichever supplier, thinking about the route with Octavius in Wessex, we would agree a target price with Octavius, and then we manage that as a project, and we manage that as an individual target price. And Octavius's success or failure commercially, our success or failure at renewing the asset has no contractual link back into the strategic business plan. Where that's different is in track today. So track is much more mature. So what this track alliance does, in fact, all of the track alliances do in Network Rail, is they agree an annual business plan, so an annual work bank, as it is described on this slide, and we agree a target price on a work bank, but on a single discipline within a single year. And that's the most mature part of Network Rail in terms of the collaborative relationship to deliver outcomes. But again, that is agreed with no link back into the strategic business plan. Where we're going with a Southern Renewals enterprise is somewhere slightly different. So, there's lots of clicking here. There we go. What we have got, and what we'll see in a moment, is in terms of how we built this, there's a hard line between what we commit we're going to do in the strategic business plan, what our work bank is for the whole control period, and how that links into the performance of the partners that you can see along the bottom just there. So the performance of the partners is fundamentally underpinned by 100% delivery of the strategic business plan. And what that means in simplistic terms is delivering all the volumes within the money available. That's the core principle with which everything else is built upon. So that's the single greatest influence on profitability, is delivery of the outcomes of the strategic business plan. So I'm not good enough talking through the animation. So how that works is our strategic business plan, you'll see in another slide in a moment, was built alongside our tenderers. So normally, as Sian just said a moment ago, we would set out how we're going to deliver the next control period. It's a very Network Rail activity. And then we would say to our regulator, this is how much stuff we're going to do, and this is what it's going to cost to do that much stuff. This time round, our tenderers worked with us to build that, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But a really key element here is, as part of that tendering process, whilst building up the cost for the job, they obviously built in their overhead. So what the target cost model, if you want to call it that, within this enterprise does, is it covers the suppliers for up to and including their overhead, irrespective of the delivery, unless it's like really, really bad. Basically, we cover their overhead. The really big differentiator is what it says there under performance related. To be able to make profit, you have to start delivering the outcomes. And as part of the tender process, our partners in CP7 tendered what they expected their profit to be. The only way they can make that profit is if they deliver 100% of the volumes within the funding available. But just so we don't end up doing stuff cheap and like burning dormice to fuel the engines of doing it, there's other I'm getting some guilty looks. I look this way. There are other modifiers that we haven't exactly specified. We're still working at the moment, so that within those 5 slices of the cheese, there's modifiers in all of those that impact a profit to the total amount of 20%, isn't it? So it's a really important point, is that we, in our strategic business plan, make commitments beyond just cost and volume. We say we're going to do things in a different way, in a positive way. There's a contractual obligation on the SID to deliver those, and that only by delivering those can they start to see enhanced profit. And one other way they can see enhanced profit is by outperforming the amount of renewals they deliver for the money available. So this is a really different way of working. It's the first time we've had a link between a strategic business plan and the profit of our partners. So this is a big new thing for rail, and that's why we're so excited about it. Again, I'll do some animation skipping. So, oh no, sorry. So in terms of how we've, oh, this animation is going to beat me today. In terms of, I'll give it a go. So in terms of how we built it up, this is what's really different. Look at the light blue bit at the bottom. In terms of the inputs here, we've built in our historic knowledge, our knowledge of the asset and our methodology. It's a combination of these elements that lets us land on a pin that says, this is what it's going to cost to deliver our outcomes in CP7. There's a slide in a moment that does it with some pictures on, which is the end state of this one. Yes, so the way this works in practice, so how we built up what CP7 is going to cost, is we have done a blend of these activities. So where we start is, what is it we want to deliver? That's the outcomes we require. We know what we want to deliver. In terms of the intelligence behind it, the first thing is what does it cost to do that stuff in CP6? So whatever it costs to do Cat 11, Cat 2, Cat 14, whatever, we use that outturn rate of CP6 as the foundation. We then look at the volumes we're going to deliver in CP7 to see if that has an impact on what it's going to cost to do. We then, with our SID partners, and this is the important bit, is look at those two together and look at how we're going to do it, what the complexity is of how we're going to operate, the complexity of the delivery. And with our SID partners, we build up what we call the pre-efficient unit rate. So that is how we delivered in CP6 overlaid against what the environment's going to be in CP7. That gives us what we call our pre-efficient unit rate. What you can see as it just to the right of the plus is we then look at what the headwinds are, what's the stuff that's going to cost us money, like inflation. And then the really important bit is we then have to sign up to our efficiencies. And this is our post-efficient target. And the way that it operates in CP7 is when I talk about delivery of commitments, that profit is linked to the post-efficient unit rate. So our supply chain is incentivized to deliver our post-efficient unit rate. That's the foundation there. So it's not pre-efficient, it's post-efficient. So efficiency is baked in to the way we're going to operate. The other thing that's interesting, that's not on an asset basis. So Volker Rail can massively outperform in track, but if that's at the expense of signalling costing twice as much, it means that all partners lose out. So everybody across every asset has to be successful because the pain and the gain is felt by everybody. It's not contained within asset silos. That's the incentivization for people to work together, and that's what's really different in this model. So that's where the excitement is. It's a really different set of incentives to, I can see some smiles. Is it the concept of track and signalling people working together? that makes me smile as well. So that's what's really different. This isn't some far off thing though. That is our programme, and the blue blob covers how far we are through it. And so what this shows, at the top, you can see our development of the strategic business plan and how that directly features in. You can see with the dotted red line going upwards into the way that it was part of the tendering exercise that our suppliers informed it. But you can also see at the bottom that where we're developing our work bank and developing the engineering access statement, they're all part of a development that's heading towards what was contract award at the start of this year. What you can see to the right is the development of the actual operating model. So you can quite clearly see we're only weeks away now from going live, and actually we're significantly through this process. What it doesn't have on here is there is a network rail people process we have to go through as well, and we're in the middle of that. So very soon, post Christmas, you'll be able to start seeing, the industry will start seeing all of these elements coming together. So we've talked through a lovely concept model, Sian and I. The point of putting this here is it shows we are on the cusp of this thing going live, and we're on target for doing so. So we're literally at the forefront of seeing this really exciting model being put into practice. And it's our opportunity to show the industry that by embracing this collaborative working, we can start really seeing an efficient way of working, which leads us on to our behaviours, Sian.
Thank you. So I think those of you who know me, you might know, so Dr. Sian at the beginning of my thing, but my doctorate was looking at collaboration between teams in big projects. So one thing that massively frustrates me about when people talk about collaboration is that everyone leaps to behaviours. And one of the reasons we've gone through the operating model and the contracting model today in that order is because people will only behave based on the environment that you kind of create for them. And so it's really important that we've worked through that operating model and the contractual model to actually give people a chance to behave in the way in which we want them to. That said, we still need to help people understand what that actually means. So what does it mean to behave in the way in which we actually want them to through the new way of working? So we have I'm just going to share a little bit about the journey and a bit of flavour of language as opposed to where we've actually landed on. So we've been working with our partners on our Southern Renewal Enterprise Behavioural Charter. So part of that is around bringing people together and building the partnership together. Some of that is around developing behaviours and then bringing leadership together and being able to develop together. And using the structure of our outcomes to help create what we think our behaviours need to be moving forward. And that's what's going to lead us to creating our behavioural charter. One of the other really important things about the contract is that the behavioural charter that we agree with our partners will become part of the contract. So if there's an event where our partners aren't behaving in line with the charter that we've been agreed, there is an opportunity to recourse against them in terms of being able to pull them back into line. One of the challenges, of course, is that there's no recourse for us as Network Rail. So the onus is us on massively to really think about how we can behave in line with the charter and what we've signed up to and what we've agreed to. So just in terms of what that includes, so we're working through a piece of work to say what's the purpose? So what is it that this renewals enterprise exists for? Why does it exist? And what's that kind of greater, higher purpose that we're working towards? That's a bit work in progress. So I've seen about 10 different versions in the last kind of 3 days, but we've been working through a series of kind of debates, conversations. Some of you might have been at the Renewals Enterprise launch a couple of weeks ago or back in October, where we got a whole bunch of feedback from about 700 people that were part of those to really inform the language that's used. But in essence, it's all about working as one team, taking action and doing things better. And so what we'll end up with is a collection of sensible and useful descriptors that you could pinpoint to say we never walk past a problem. So what does that actually mean? And then really pick it up on an individual's kind of on an individual basis so that we understand, assuming the best in each other in terms of working as one team, making sure we've got that environment that's inclusive, looking to help each other, really focusing on doing things better by seeking diverse input or kind of owning the results of our work and learning from experience. So what we're trying to do here is turn what might be kind of historic management jargon, kind of, words that might otherwise be used into stuff that is actually relatable and you can really use on a day-to-day basis. So this is very much work in progress, but thought it was important to share it because I think this is the bit that, given everything that we've set up in terms of the environment we're trying to create, we then need some tools to be able to and others to account in terms of the way that we're working. So that was a whistle-stop tour through the renewals enterprise and some of the thinking, but there's so much more around it that it's kind of hard to pin it down. So time for questions. Shall I stop sharing? That'd probably be useful. Stick Teams up so everybody can see who's.
Still sharing.
I'm still sharing, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, we've got full-size giant John Jack.
There we go, John. We could like do some strange no, it's not gonna work, is it?
No.
No. Oh no. Just go there, shall we? Cool.
Thank you very much, Sian and Tim. That was great. Let's start with questions in the house, and then we'll move across to people who are online. So, has anybody got a question for Tim or for Jim?
We've not talked a thing about work or methods of work, and I'd just like to know how this scheme of things works in relation to things like the relaying train and the mega plant, if you like, which have rather been neglected in recent times. And I think because they've been neglected, they've become inefficient. How are you going to build the options in to consider whether that should be the way to do the job or whether it should be done with 2 men and a shovel?
Yeah.
Yeah, so are you talking about high output plant? Yes. So what's different in this is, let me think. So, if this weekend a Network Rail provided piece of kit fails, the cost risk associated with that sits with Network Rail. Equally, the opportunity of doing things more efficiently by using a big piece of plant or 2 men and a shovel, whichever of those, in this model, all of that opportunity is borne by the partners. So we're not prescriptive in the way they must deliver the work. They can deliver the work however they want, as long as it meets the outputs defined by the capable owner. So we're not going to be prescriptive to say you must do it in methodology X or methodology Y. For all of our partners, irrespective of discipline, it's up to them to live within the requirements set, but they can draw upon whatever they want to deliver their work. So if they feel that the right way to deliver this work is by bringing high output back to Southern, that's absolutely within their gift. The reason we've done a 10-year partnership is it gives the certainty of work bank to be able to invest. Because if you give people a job or even a year's worth of work, there's an opportunity to invest really. So this gives them the certainty to be able to invest in whatever plant or people or processes they see fit to make the maximum profit they can. So we're not going to tell them to use it or ban them from using it. The opportunity will be there for them to deliver however they see fit that delivers the outcomes.
But I think it's worth acknowledging that. I think, Paul, you might have done this piece of work, but we had quite a debate in building the business plans as to whether or not the organisations in Network Rail as a whole could commit to high output for the next control period. And as a region, we just didn't have enough that was kind of worthwhile in terms of, taking a fifth of the cost of maintaining it as an entity. But that's one of the beauties of the ecosystem, is that actually if it transpires by giving visibility of the work bank and being able to plan it in a different way or align the planet slightly better, that actually it becomes a much more sort of viable option in the future. But our work just didn't lend it to it in the work bank for this kind of time period, did it?
Yes, I'm sorry, I don't know. Michael.
Really interesting to hear about the behaviour chart here, and I just wondered, I guess there are two separate questions I understand is doing development. It mentioned, you're going to morph it back into alliance, which is great, but I guess it's how do you make it in sort of incentivized way? I mean, I think you mentioned, if they're not behaving, we can hold them to account, but whether there's a commercial model, and obviously that makes it difficult to really embed within the whole, so everyone within the ecosystem, from very high up to very low down and within the organisation. I just wondered how you're planning to embed that, I guess.
So so there's a few things. So yes, it forms part of the contract, which it's sort of interesting, but it's there, and so hopefully we just acknowledge that it's there. But to point around embedment, that there's it's been developed by kind of in terms of just the wording of it, by a small group, and then kind of building out in terms of, well, does this make sense? Is it relatable? Can we do more about it? And I referenced a couple of events we had in October. So about 700 people over 3 events got the chance to look at the developing charter and sort of provided feedback on whether they kind of agreed with the words, whether the words frustrated them, whether they were super cynical about it, or if there are alternatives or what have you. So what is emerging is something that's been developed by quite a large group of people in terms of the language and kind of how it's used. And then it will form part of effectively the induction for people that are part of the renewals enterprise, and then we'll roll it out much more broadly in Southern region. And we're doing a bit of work to say, well, how does it relate to our cultural principles? Luckily, I think it's really easy to map between them, though that wasn't a deliberate kind of design piece. It was something we developed with the partners. So I think part of it is around, it's been developed with a whole bunch of people to make sure the language is something that people understand and can subscribe to, and then we're going to have to just be relentless at using it and rolling it out and keeping on sort of championing it and challenging it. We've had a few conversations with a couple of other big projects that have done similar things in terms of their vision statements or what have you, and the feedback is always, you've just got to be relentless. You've got to sort of share it, publish it, and then just keep sticking with it and being relentless, and don't change the first time something is a bit challenging against it. Just keep reinforcing it and really believing in it.
Is this a national rollout, or is this a southern thing?
Southern. So just for Southern.
What are the rest of the country do?
We'll let you
They're quite
know.
different.
Yes, so Project 13 isn't this is the way you do it. There's tools within, it's a toolkit, and you can pick which tools you're going to use. So all regions are using elements of it. We are the boldest region in terms of going all in, collaborative enterprise between all partners for 2 control periods. Now, no one else is doing it to that scale. It's variable depending on the nature of the work and depending on the footprint. We've got a very low enhancement footprint in Southern, so it's broadly just renewals. So it gives us the opportunity of doing it this way. Other regions, as you go north, have massive amounts of enhancements. So the integration is more complex in those areas. And also the types of investment people are doing is slightly different. Wales and Western is probably similar to us in terms of their investment being more renewals, and their model is probably similar to ours as well. The other thing is, it's up to us in Southern to prove to the rail industry that this thing works, because it is the boldest thing. It has the greatest opportunity, but there's a level of threat with that. So the onus is on us to prove to everybody else at the end of CP7 they should be clamouring to get hold of this. But at the minute, it's just us taking it to this extent. But Project 13 is already live at Carstairs. It's already live on Transpennine route upgrade. So it's not new to rail. It's just new in a whole renewals portfolio for a whole region for 2 control periods.
You spoke about some of the outcomes, the wheel on the right hand side, and one of them was around happy customers in the route. Slightly biased question, but how would you propose measuring whether customers are happy in the route?
So now Mark Killick's got it's a lot easier. So, that's not being really being recorded, is it? Absolutely. But joking aside, they're intense, and we're working on at the minute with the partners is how do you make that a quantifiable thing that's stretching, because it's a contractual obligation linked to profit, that we're still working through the exact mechanisms of how do you do it. There's the obvious things around train performance delays, what have you, but the exact specifics around that's still in a contractual thing we're going through with the partners. So watch this space. I'd say it's not quite the
watch this space, and you might get pulled into a conversation. Yeah.
Probably linked to that. I think it would be good to be part of that, so we can buy the team into it from
Yeah.
the start, like this is what we've agreed, so yeah.
Cool.
Really good.
Yeah.
Another quick question, so as well, we spoke about leaving a positive legacy for our internal people. What kind of things are you thinking of in that space?
Oh, so there's a whole piece opportunity, I think, around for the industry generally around joined up apprenticeship schemes, kind of investment across organisations, and there's quite a lot of excitement about the opportunity that exists just because we're committing for 10 years in terms of being able to do that. So you know, and that kind of moves through the whole life cycle of folks. There's quite a lot around the communities that we invest in. So actually, if it and the lineside neighbours, if in order to kind of get permission to deliver renewals work, or we're working close to different communities, is there something we can do around kind of legacy investment with those guys? So there was I can't remember which signalling scheme it was that sort of refurbished a playground like years ago with their kind of waste products and bits and pieces. So bits and pieces like that. But then also you know, investing in STEM or underrepresented groups, or kind of looking at different kind of ways of bringing different people into the industry, whether it be ex-offenders or what have you, or really investing in local communities that we're working in. So it's quite a plethora of opportunity that we need to be really sort of thoughtful of and cognizant about, chasing the things that add value rather than kind of fairly random.
When we were doing the how do we bring the charter to life exercise, we used a bit of AI in that room with 350 people, where people gave their feedback, and it's really interesting. What one of the things coming through with the legacy lens is, me and Sian might talk about transformation, demonstration of efficiency. What the feedback in the room is, it's about training, development, increasing diversity, diversity of experience for people who work in different organisations. So that was because of the feedback was so strong through the charter piece of work we did. It's going to feature in that way. So it's about the personal development we're going to give people who work here now, and then the diversification of opportunity for people who don't yet work here. How that's quantified again.
I think it's a huge opportunity.
Absolutely, and that's why it's a contractual obligation linked to profit. That's why we're gonna. It's not just a nice thing to have on some KPIs on a wall. By linking profit to it, we think that's going to be a different incentivisation lever to pull upon.
Definitely, and I think in terms of development as an industry, it makes us more attractive as an employer if we can say it's actually really easy to go and work for one of our contracting partners.
Yeah.
I did it for 10 months. I put on their PPE and told no one who I worked for, and it was brilliant. But I learned so much, and was probably, well, hopefully a better client after it then. So yeah, I think it's good to take that opportunity.
Cool.
Is there a solid management structure identified to manage the interface between your partners, and how is that decision making about offloading risk between those partners managed? Who's the man in charge?
Actually, it's going to be a lady.
Yeah.
I can actually say that. So each of there's something which we call the SID executive team. So the SID executive team has an exec member for each of the partners on it. So for Network Rail, because, well, Mark, it's Mark, isn't it now? But anyway, between Mark and I, we're effectively represent the capable owner. So it's not us on the set, it's Peter Austin, because he's kind of independent of what else is going on. So Peter Austin is the Network Rail executive member. And then each of our partners have a senior sort of exec member that is on that set team. That set team hold what we call the SID director to account, and there's a lady who's joining in February who will be that SID director, and then Tim Coucher at the moment is undertaking that role as the SID director, and he's in the process of setting up with the partners what that organisation looks like underneath it, and kind of the whole sort of stack of governance structures, etc. around it. So the key is that set team. We're giving quite a lot of kind of all power, if you like, to that team, and then that SID director reports to that set, but also will sit on the Southern Region executive team, so that interface is there as well.
But in terms of specifically, I was going to look at risk management. There's virtually no risk held outside of the SID. So within the 5 delivery partners, if one partner holds a bunch of risk and the other doesn't, it doesn't actually make any difference because it all comes out the same pot of money. There's no alternative pots of money. So the risk can be managed by individual partners, but they don't hold the risk. It's held jointly by everybody. They just choose who's most appropriate to manage it. In terms of the decision making, there's no changes possible. There's no claims possible. So there's no mechanism for having claims within the environment. So to manage that, all decision making has to be unanimous. So there's no we're more powerful than you because we're the client. The only way that there is no escalation process for conflict, it all has to be managed within, and it's because all the risk is collectively held.
So it's super exciting.
That sounds it. I think it's only fair we should give chance to answer some of the questions that have come up in the chat. First from Bob. Bob, if you're on, do you want to pose your question verbally rather than just reading out the chat?
Yes, I'll thank you for an interesting presentation tonight. I have to say it shows my age, but it does remind me of CP3 going into there. And very similar discussions that we have. So everything sort of goes round full circle. But one of the things we've fallen foul of in the past is the focus on volumes rather than delivery of specific jobs. There are certain jobs where it's fairly easy to deliver the volumes, and there are often critical jobs where delivery is a lot more difficult, a lot more inefficient. And how do you make sure that the focus is on those difficult jobs rather than just volume? Because I've heard a lot of talk about volume. I've not heard talk about these are the really difficult jobs that are going into CP7.
But shall I start? So I think Bob, that's where the outcome piece is really, really critical. So both the outcome and the fact that we've shared the entire work bank, and so it's kind of outcome associated with a whole set of work that we need to deliver, and so we won't have happy customers delivering all of the right outcomes if we're not delivering those jobs that make a massive difference to the organisation, and so there is a piece around making sure that is the case. I don't really want to chip into.
Yeah. So what I'd say, Bob, is if I bring a real example to life, what we're not going to do in the Southern Renewals enterprise is say at Christmas, can you deliver 14-point ends? And then they're carried out on the Isle of Grain rather than Voltaire Road because it's so much easier. So whilst the profit is linked to the volumes, it's not whatever volumes you feel like. You can't do a load of plain line track renewals on a line that's got no trains on it. So within the work bank, that is set out for the capable owner, it lists out projects. Because this is being recorded, I won't say what I'm thinking, but Network Rail's learned from its incentivization model fails of the past, where we've linked on delivery just of output of stuff. So where we've incentivized people for delivering widgets, they deliver the first 100 easy widgets, and the 10 that are left are impossible to do. So we're not going to do that. And it's about how we specify. It's not just volumes. It lists individual interventions that are needed, and then what needs to happen to the asset in those areas. And
then just a reflection on your comment around CP3. So one of the things around the Project 13 principles and infrastructure client group work is that, you know, every infrastructure provider has been through waves of how closely do we work with supply chain organisations? Oh no, they're taking the mickey, we need to split ourselves around, and everybody's been through multiple circles. So one of the intents of the whole kind of model and the report that it's written on is called From Transactions to Enterprises, is to try and unpick why we, you know, have flip-flopped so many times within different models to try and get to the point of, well, what do these businesses exist for? And therefore, how do you make, you know, all the business outcomes realistic rather than a historic kind of flip-flop between, you know, being joined up or separated or what have you. So I think it is different, but it is sort of reflected of those cycles of activity across different infrastructure providers.
Thank you, Sean. We also offered the opportunity for John Jarrett to ask his question, especially as he was going to come on in person, but was struck down by ill health or bug. So far away, John.
a severe case of man flu. You know how bad. So thank you very much, and apologies for not joining you there. Thank you. Very interesting, as Bob says. One question for me: 10 years is a long time. I'm really interested on the incentivization to innovate for your supply chain, because innovation costs money, or usually costs money. New ideas, new techniques, new plant, different training, so on and so forth. Why would they not stand still over 10 years and just use the same old? Where's the innovation incentive in the plan?
So some of it is, again, sorry, stuck record, relates to the outcomes, and some of it is around what they're incentivized to deliver. And then I think in terms of just the efficiency plans and what they've committed to from an efficiency perspective, there's a whole wealth of opportunity in there that comes from innovating and doing things differently. So I think there's a combination of commitments and assumptions they've made through driving efficiencies and the piece around outcomes that help us in that space. Of course, we've got to respond to the challenge of, if only you let us do this network rail, we'd be able to be much more efficient or do this much quicker. And so there's a real challenge, I think, for us to not constrain that, and actually giving the supply chain that portfolio and recognising the opportunity we have to work with the ecosystem means we could probably make ourselves more comfortable about trying things quicker, more differently in different places, so that we're ready to learn much quicker than maybe we would have done differently. And there's certainly part of the devolved model of Network Rail and us recognising where we're able to deviate or do things differently, or where we're comfortable to do that in a measured way, should give us the opportunity to do it much more than perhaps we've been able to before.
Yeah, it's interesting with different partners from different industries sharing innovation between them, because one person's innovation is another one's opportunity, and I think that's a real sign. If you achieve that, that's a real sign of maturity. So good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We could, sorry.
Unfortunately, yeah, and
we could talk for hours.
Yeah, I mentioned how interesting everybody found this topic and how not what it is, but I'll let Andy elaborate on that better. So apologies to those online that we've not been able to answer your questions. We just hope this serves as a further incentive to come along in person, because you get a
Absolutely. Well, what a fantastic talk, and how good to sort of hear it from the horse's mouths. A sort of a publicity spiel or something like that, because you can see from the presentation and hear in the words the commitment and the belief that's gone into the development of that. And I guess, Sian and Tim, that just needs to carry on, doesn't it? So, because this enterprise will stand or fall on the basis of those sort of leadership behaviours and getting our suppliers to truly commit to them as well. So it's a big challenge, but I'm really pleased to see you taking it on, because the old contract delivery mechanisms won't give the railway what it needs over the next 5 to 10 years. So that's fantastic. Sian, your opening slide had a young engineer in the corner, and I sort of had a Doctor Who moment, actually, where I thought, wouldn't it be marvellous to be a young engineer, pick up on your point, Anne, to be a young engineer at the start of this, and having all those opportunities to pitch in with suppliers and learn that side of things as well. I really hope that, as capable owners, I'm going to do the we thing again, that as capable owners we can care about profit, learn to care about profit, and that as suppliers can learn to care about quality. And if we get those two things right, then it'll be a marvellous thing. I'm going home now to form a new band. It's a heavy metal band, and it's called Burning Dormouse.
I'm going to show Sarah that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a pleasure working with you, Sian. Yeah.
So thanks very much, and that was a great talk.
Yeah.
Are we going to be retiring down to
Something like that, I'll never work with you before.
All right. Okay.
Very much. You'll be able to share your copy of the presentation.
Yes, I will do. I may do a PDF so you don't have to click through every single animation.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have a little look. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Shall I leave this now?
Yeah.
Yes. Bye, folks. Thank you.
Thank you.